Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Y whales, wherever in the world you are today. Today is episode 19 of the yWeb3 Navigating Frontier Tech series. So today we're going to take a journey going through the current crypto landscape, exploring some pressing needs for legislative action in response to the evolving risks of the digital asset realm. We'll also dive into the dynamics of a Canadian fintech investments and the latest developments in the ETF space, as well as Hawaii's strategic pivot into crypto regulations. There's a lot of AI generated fear and FUD storming through the interwebs. And we've got a big announcement with someone here in person with Khori with ENS. So we're going to talk about that here. Most importantly, right off the bat, today is February 8th, 2024. Bitcoin, I just hit 45K, which is a huge win. And the NASDAQ is still sitting at about a 15,700. Let's just kind of jump right into our guests, Khori and Einaras. Khori, give us the quick background and everything you're working on today.
Sure, Jay. Good to see you again. Thanks for having me here. Khori Whittaker, the executive director at ENS Labs, and we run the Ethereum Name Service. Prior to ENS, I was with Circle, USDC, and prior to that, I ran a network of schools here in the United States for quite some time.
Fabulous. Education is the number one most critical need we have, not just traditionally, but in Web3 as well. So we're thrilled to have that knowledge over here. Einaras, I know you're bored and you have nothing to do.
No. Awesome to be here, Jay. Thank you. So I run a company called Cube3 AI. We do security. So we secure the blockchain. We secure projects that are deploying on chain with some, I'd like to say, quite advanced AI methods and products.
Fabulous. So let's dive right into the news. And I think, I think number one, I don't think there's a lot of really amazing things going on. But one of those is this need to be able to kind of intermix, Web2 and Web3. They're entirely different protocols. I look at Web3 as just as big of an involvement as Web1. Web2 was kind of like, hey, we're going to take the infrastructure and kind of change it around a little bit. Web3 is almost a rewrite. It's a little bit of starting over in some capacities. And we have a problem that Web2 and Web3 really don't see each other well because of that large delta. Khori, you've worked on this for quite a minute now. ENS has really been focusing on kind of, identity and not just kind of the hashes. Because if we go way back, I think a few of us on this call are old enough to remember, like, I used to know web pages based on either A, the phone number that you had to dial in to get to the modem, or B, the IP address that we would type in. And you had, I can remember having, either sticky notes or a book next to my computer that I would type these things in, and that's how you would get to web pages. And then they realized that this is a horrible idea, and phonetically was a better option. And so the .coms and everything rolled in. But that's still very a nuanced thing in Web3. So run us through. I don't need to read the summary. You built this.
Yeah, sure. So you maybe just reflect on the days of the BBS and dialing into the bulletin board systems there. Yeah. But yeah, as you just mentioned, Web3 is definitely an evolution. It's not just a step up, it's an evolution from Web2. And what has been happening the last several years, 10, 15 years, is you have all the scientists that are playing around in Web2 and creating gadgets and gizmos that delight them and that are interested to them. So it's created this sort of niche where people are playing, and they're isolated from the rest of the Web2 world, where the rest of the world is actually interacting. So from the onset, ENS has been interested in bridging the gap and really making sure that Web3 and the new internet is accessible to the rest of the world who currently is still on Web2. What we're able to do is come up with a way for all of DNS users, and these are people that use your typical TLDs, your top level domains, .coms, .net, .org, and we're now able to upgrade, right? So to upgrade those domains, give them ENS capability so that you can then use it on the blockchain. So what this does is just opens the world in a simple way to Web3 functionality. And we're just so excited about the partnership with GoDaddy, one of the biggest registrars that are out there, being able to upgrade, supercharge the domains, and really open the floodgates to people beginning to participate in Web3. So very big news here.
I love that. I love that. So I got a couple questions while we've got you, and then we got tons of other news. But so number one, is it a technology, because there's a lot of infrastructure I'm sure you had to do to bridge these two. Natively it's, they don't resolve this way. Is it technology that will roll out to other registers, or is it something that you're specially doing with GoDaddy? Like, is it happening at the DNS level, or is it happening with some backend servers for you guys to interconnect these?
Yes. So what's happening is there is an upgrade on the DNS servers that's available now to everyone. Okay. Right. So everyone, if you're good with your DNS, you're able to go in and tinker and upgrade your traditional DNS right now. But the vast majority of us don't have the technical capability to be able to do that. So the interface in GoDaddy is just simple. It's elegant. It's a couple clicks to upgrade the domain.
Okay. So it's infrastructure. You just have kind of created the WYSIWYG, ease for people to be able to do this. But anyone that hosts their own somewhere else, or hosts their own DNS servers, which lots of people do, Google does a lot for others, it will roll to others. So there's no proprietary thing. It's just a partnership.
That's right. And I fully expect other registrars to be able to give this capability as well.
I love that. It's fabulous. So Einaras, jumping over to you, because, now you've got the problem that you're working on the security side of all this. Web3 is hard enough right now. Web2 has a gazillion security flaws and everything else. How does this in your brain, what is starting to click of things that you're going to need to manage to continue to keep everyone safe?
Well, it's another bridge for the old world to cross into this new world, right? And we need them. We really, really need them. But I think what will happen is, as the old world comes into blockchain, people will get even more serious about security, compliance, and all the rest of it. We're very much in the wild, wild west here in blockchain, some corners of at least. So I really I saw this announcement, even before I knew I was going to be on this call with Khori. This is super cool. Super cool.
So Khori, what's the biggest, to anyone that's listening that goes, I see the capabilities, I understand the concepts. Give us like those 2 or 3 use cases that should be right off the bat be huge wins that you guys have already kind of identified.
Yeah. So the simplest one is to be able to use an identity that you choose. So heretofore it's been .eth, right? J.eth, Einaras.eth, Khori.eth. But if we're thinking about giving people the opportunity to claim an identity to use, maybe people don't want to use .eth as their identity. You got Kim.com out there. Maybe that's his particular identity. Identity Digital, a registrar that has a ton of these customized identities. One of them is .pro, right? So let's say you want to use J.pro as your identity. Supercharge it, give it ENS capability, and now you can use it on Web3 applications, sending value, currency back and forth, send Bitcoin to it, Ethereum, Ripple, you name it. Log into dApps with your J.pro. But yeah, same functionalities as your .eth. Now you can pick any one of these TLDs that you want to use as your main identity, and it stays with you. It's yours.
That is huge, and that is amazing. So basically you can connect this and have all the plumbing. So yeah, I'm gonna definitely play, because I guess we were talking about before the call, I own 350 plus domains, and so the .eth. It's very confusing for most people, because they do the first thing, they try to type it in, and so we'll always be .eth at heart. I love the fact that you have truly bridged Web2 and Web3, so that's fabulous. Appreciate that. And I'm sure there's quite a bit more to come. So we're going to jump back and dive into some things. We'll come back through this. So, right off the bat, it's been a minute since I've talked to the two of you guys. The ETFs have gotten approved, and there's been a tone change. It's been about a month, I think. So we're really only about 4 weeks since the approval. Today is the 8th. So yeah, it's about 4 weeks. Didn't have that kind of boom cycle that we all thought. It went up and then it came back down. But I think most importantly, it's now doing the crab walk sideways. So in what I would say is not a great economy, it's a challenging economy to say the least. We're seeing, Bitcoin really hold steady, but we're seeing a flow out from the traditional, kind of crypto, Bitcoin people into the BlackRocks and the Fidelities and everyone else. So it's kind of just been a transition of holdings. And let's be clear that we've seen Grayscale hold for a long, long, long time. So they're getting to realize a lot of their asset sales and provide some liquidity there. We also saw FTX dumping their bags to provide liquidity to the people that were hurt in Bankman's fraud. But it's kind of been an overlying issue, which is how do you manage these things? To me, the ETFs do nothing more than provide safe security in custody. They don't do anything else. There's no use case for it. There's no, you're not using these things. You're not using the Bitcoin network. It just allows institutions to have that regulatory basically approvals to say, I can own this. It's held, it's insured, and I don't have to think about it or worry about losing it. Now we have Janet Yellen, who has always said she doesn't understand it. She thinks they're scams. Now coming out saying she's in favor of regulation, which is what I think we all want to see. Europe has my car, which is very clear and easy to work with. Einaras, you and I have talked about that at length. And we even had Obama come out and saying, this is like the future. So Bitcoin's now popular again amongst politicians. Einaras, I'll start with you. What's your thoughts when you see this?
Well, so I'll give you sort of an example from my life. We observe at Cube3, we observe pretty much everything that's taking place on chain. So we see the fraudsters, the criminals, the hackers, both crypto native criminals as well as real world criminals that are using blockchain, and we see a lot of them transact on chain. Unfortunately, one project that shall not be named, but it's a pretty big one, and it's consistent. We reached out to them and we said, look, you've got a bunch of sanctioned folks using your protocols. You've got a bunch of regular crypto hackers using your protocols, transacting. What's up? Can we help you here? And the response, which is more often than not, is, well, what do you want us to do about it? So, and I'm kind of old school in that sense. Like if there are criminals, they're criminals. And if they're using your company, in this case, it's a company, to move money around, it's a problem. So I welcome regulation, smart regulation, of course. We need this because it's just we're shooting ourselves in the foot without it. It's coming. Question is, in what shape or form?
And I completely agree. It's, regulation, I think most people think of bad things. Regulation is consumer protection. Like you don't want, unregulated assets are dangerous. You don't know. They can be rug pulls. It's gambling more than it is investing. And so I think that we do want less of the spikes and up and downs and the rug pulls. And that will also mean that, there's not going to be the 1,000x gains in a 24-hour period because you have, proper guardrails in place to keep it happening. But, we need to have that delta in between investing and gambling, really be pushed quite further apart. And that's part of the way that I think regulation will fit. Khori, you spend a lot of time on this as well, because you're very much in this domain and you see this happening. And, people buy and sell and trade .eth and other domains. And so you want to make sure that you're also not being, they're not using the .eth things as
that's right.
OFAC, non-compliant assets.
That's right. That's right. And, we get have a lot of conversations with the authorities on these matters. And so something has to be done. Now, what's telling for me is how money is talking. So now that tons of funds are flowing into the institutions who beforehand were, anti-crypto, anti-Web3, et cetera. Now the ETFs are set up. We see where the winds are blowing. And so now you have strong calls for regulation and for Congress to do something now that the money has shifted, right? So it's clear the influence is pushing the process in this direction, which of course we do welcome. Happy to hear that they want to have just a clear stablecoin legislation. Let's get that done because the new internet, most of us are going to interact with USDC, USDT, and some of the other stables. Most people in the world are going to use those cryptos to exchange value much more quickly. So let's get that right. And that will start to help the continued adoption of this technology.
And I think that, when you talk about stablecoins, and number one, you did mention you used to be with Circle, and we've had you on back when you were there. Stablecoins dynamically changed Web3. Because suddenly you had the ability to go in and out of cryptocurrencies without having to go all the way back to fiat. So that allowed the capital to stay inside the asset class. And USDC and USDT couldn't be more different philosophies. USDC, you essentially have an IOU for for a single US dollar, and legally you guys are. So not you guys. Circle does a great job, I think, of showing those disclosures. USDT is an investment fund. They own Bitcoin, they own assets, they own lots of things. They're essentially operating, a bank. And so I think that there's going to be a real challenge. For a number of years, we've said USDT was going to be the black swan, and it ended up being Luna instead, and it ended up being FTX. So USDT has done a good job, but that's a whole nother conversation for another day. Unless, Einaras, you want to talk about, kind of some of the obvious flaws in their math.
Flaws in the math in Tether? Yeah.
Tether, yeah.
No. Well, fingers crossed.
And that's what it is. We should not be sitting here saying we hope that they don't, have a Luna, type issue where because they print and burn, all the time. So, but we'll go from there. So right off the bat, and I think this is a huge one, because all of us, every single one of us is always looking for investments. We do have more rounds to go. There is very few, what I would say, mature companies inside of Web3 or inside of crypto that aren't going to be in various forms of raises over the next 5 to 10 years. And so seeing that the crypto industry is the top Canadian fintech investments, that's huge. Because what we need is less of the, hey, I invested in FTX and lost all my money. Hey, I invested in this protocol and it turns out it was a rug pull. Like, we do need traditional investing to happen. And so I think that this is a good one. And it really kind of showcases that you don't always need an ETF, but these are legal companies. And that's the biggest difference, is these aren't coin offerings. These are actual cap tables that people were investing in. Khori, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think this is great that you have crypto native companies that are going through the process of due diligence and being ready to get to the point where they're able to receive funding. And the fact that it's been tops for 2 years in Canada, I think it's just tremendous for us. We need more adults in the room and more people accepting that professionalism is important. Standards are important. Regulation is important. So this is a great sign of the maturation of the industry, right?
Absolutely. And Einaras, to me, when you talk about security, you have to have disclosures. You have to have somebody that's liable for them to even care about security, because if not, it's hey, it's just a project, it's just a side thing. So to me, this is a huge win as well for security and compliance across the entire asset class.
Yeah, and we still have obviously ways to go, because the traditional VCs are still sitting out for the most part. They're still lukewarm. They still are hesitant. So there's a feel that a shift in terms of funding overall in crypto this year. I mean, it's early, but everyone's quite bullish this year again. But I feel like the traditional VCs are still staying put. To your point, it goes back to the same, what can we trust and what's compliant, what's not? Are we going to get in trouble? There's too much hair on this. Let's focus on what we understand. So we still have a lot of cleaning up to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is a very volatile asset class, the most volatile that I've ever seen. I see you guys trying to read that list. We'll get those over in the show notes and post that with the video. So BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF is in the top 0.2% of all ETF flows so far this year, and I think that's huge because these are not. There is no professional, investment banker or registered investment advisor telling their clients to do anything more than 1%. We've seen Fidelity come out with this knowledge. Everyone's kind of pushing about 1%. So the fact that this is, and we've heard this is the Bitcoin ETFs together are the most successful, essentially IPO, if you want to say it. the ETFs were Bitcoin's IPO. That's kind of the way that I think of it. It was just across many different custodies. And if you added those all together, it's the most successful IPO of all time. So this is Bitcoin's introduction to traditional capital markets. Mm-hmm. That being said, Einaras, you've been watching this for a minute. I don't think that you're a Bitcoin guy or maxi, but how do you feel that this has changed kind of the tone of the investment space?
A lot more legitimacy, right? I mean, it's a big one. It's a big domino that is helping everyone downstream in their businesses. But remember, I think we talked about that a couple of months ago, where the discussion you and I had was that with this ETF and what's coming next, Bitcoin could become sort of the spy for global economy, right? Sort of the index for global economy. As more assets and as it becomes very easy to acquire, buy, hold. So that's the index. So we'll see. Kind of curious your thoughts at the same time, why, in the anticipation we had a run up, then it got a little soft. Is it just for technical reasons? People were moving in and out, or?
Well, I think there was the first chance for legal liquidity for a lot of these longtime holders. So number one, we saw about $2 billion exit from the FTX estate. So those were everyone exiting from that capacity. Then we have Grayscale. That quite simply, we know that entire organization has had some challenges. And so they were exiting quite a bit as well. They actually kept their fees relatively high because they went to spot trading. But before that, they were kind of a Bitcoin futures thing. I never really understood the math of how they were doing it. But they were the largest holder of institutional Bitcoins. And so we saw the flow out of FTX and out of Grayscale into a variety of the other ones. And I think that's the reason for a lot of the ups and downs is kind of, it's the first time to really legally fill your bags if you're a large financial institution. And now that they have the holdings, now it's time, that they can start pushing to their clients and starting to resell those.
Very interesting. I suppose, the closer we are to Bitcoin being a global index or global economy index, the less volatile it will become, right? Mm-hmm. So early innings.
Yeah. And I think the thing to kind of understand, and we've talked about these ETFs, at length. And so at this point, I'm not an expert in ETFs, but I kind of do understand there's a few things. Number one, there's no OTC whatsoever with these. They instituted right at the end a concept called cash creation, meaning that you have to buy and sell them on the open market. So you can use limit orders, you can do all those kind of things, but all the trades are happening in clear, basically on the market. So no one's like behind the scenes getting discounts or anything else. So that really does help the institutional adoption and keeps it from being, hey, I've got 1,000 Bitcoins. Let me just sneak those into the ETF. Let me sell these in the back room. So I think that's very helpful for a level playing field and to make sure that we all know what's happening. So that also being said, these are held in institutional grade. You can't spend them like cash. You can't do them. So it really has turned them into digital gold. So those are the few concepts I always like kind of, push people on is, you're removing these from the ecosystem of being able to spend them, and truly putting them into almost cold storage as an ETF. Khori, has this come across your desk at all?
Yeah, I've seen this. And, I do think that possibly people are just waiting for more news to shake out. As you mentioned, there are individuals and institutions that are liquidating at this point. As you mentioned, it's the first time that they have the ability to get out. So I think once some of these liquidation events happen, people will start to accumulate and you'll start to see some stability here. But overall, this is, again, great news for us.
Yep, absolutely. So Ripple, I really do like
Ripple's
Ripple.
Not done. I thought we were done with Ripple.
No, they got a few more. They won one, they got a few more, and Ripple's goal, whether it's kind of known is they want to IPO. They've always run themselves as a public company. They do all the work, even if they don't get none of the rewards. And so one of the reasons they're so comfortable with their lawsuit, by the way, they've spent over $200 million, on this lawsuit is to kind of say, what is the rules to be able to launch a company that has tokenized shares? They got a good ruling, a ruling in their favor, which went against Gensler and the SEC. And so now it looks like we've got the judge has granted the SEC's motion ordering Ripple to disclose financial statements from 22 and 23 and contracts related to its only institutional sales, what they would deem to be professional investors. What were the disclosures? How was it happening? Was it legal? Because that's what they oversee. I think this is interesting, and my thought around Ripple has grown much more positive over time, and I've seen how they manage this because there's a big delta. This is a very large international team. There's a lot of international adoption. I spent a lot of time this last year in Europe, and in the large financial institutions that I interacted with, they loved Ripple. They love the thought of it. It's cheaper, it's faster, it's easier. It speeds everything up, and it lowers the cost for them. It increases compliance, and it follows the rules. I think in the United States, it's because they can't operate legally, or it's been retroactively kind of pushed against them. They've had that challenge. So, to me, I think regulation through lawsuits is not a good way to do things. Mm-hmm. So I always say, if they can figure this thing out in the back room, that's what you want to do. And then create clear rules for the rest of us, because there's a dozen projects that I could launch here in the United States. And Einaras and Khori, I'm sure you guys could do the same thing. And if we do it, we'd love to have tokenized shares. But until we have a game book and a playbook that follows the rules, you just can't touch it, because maybe it's just me, I don't have $200 million to spend on defending lawsuits.
Do you feel like we're a couple of years away from those rules in the U.S., or is it coming sooner?
I think we're an administration away. I don't think this current administration is, and I say this as nicely as I can, is capable of managing this. I don't think that you have the right people in the right seats that can truly understand this. And I say that from the concept that Janet Yellen, while has had an amazing career, she doesn't, she's part of the old guard. Her loyalties lie to traditional bankers that are fearful of blockchain based assets and cryptocurrencies. Gary Gensler is very much looking forward to his appointment upon his exit from government into most likely a very large institution. And I think that we all understand that especially in the United States, the political malfeasance is very much up front. I mean, Nancy Pelosi is the number one hedge fund trader in the world right now, yeah. And only because she can trade with insider information. So mm-hmm. I think that there's really not a playing field. And so that's why I say I think it's going to take a different administration to come in and say, look, we're not going to do a CDBC. And I think that's what you're hearing from Vivek and Trump and RFK. So you have like three of the main people that are kind of moving right now is like, we don't want to do a government-based CDBC, but cryptocurrencies and regulation around that is critically important for them. So I think that's what my point is.
Yeah. This whole thing with the SEC has been an unfortunate wet blanket on the industry here in this country. And this has caused a lot of bad actors to take hold and cause lots of potential business leaders here in the U.S. to take their business elsewhere, overseas, where there's just some sanity around regulation. So this enforcement via legal action, has just put such a damper. But again, as we mentioned earlier, the winds seem to be changing.
Yep. Calls
for regulation. Hopefully this type of stuff will end so we can get back to business here in the U.S.
Yeah. And like I said, we're the old guys that talk about this type of stuff. But if we go back to Web 1, you never would have had an Amazon. You never would have had an eBay. You never would have had e-commerce would not exist today as we know it had this been the tone of technology. Because remember, it was the exact reverse. It was, hey, we're not even going to charge sales tax if you buy it online. we're going to give them all these passes like, hey guys, you're a young industry, just try not to have too much fraud. And, by the way, you can get insurance and you don't have to pay this. So you're going to have an advantage, because they wanted to grow that industry. This has been the exact opposite. This is pushing, innovation overseas. And I think very anti-American type adoption in this type of stuff.
It's a great analogy. Yeah. Damn.
Yeah. I think business leaders, we've been so rational in our approach to running businesses, launching businesses here. And we have to realize that the political process is irrational, and, use our resources to move the political process forward. And, that means campaign donations and otherwise. So I think we need to do a much better job at playing the game in Washington, D.C. to prevent this type of stuff from happening.
Yeah. And it is, to me, this type of stuff, cryptocurrency and blockchain regulation is so much bigger of a deal than most of the things that people are fighting about. Now there's huge ones like immigration and taxes and all that other stuff. But I'd say that there are some fights that have been happening since before I was born that have not been resolved. They're not going to be resolved ever. And this is one of those points that, like, hey, this is more job opportunities. This is more liquidity for the things you own. Like, fighting this means you're fighting against like tokenized mortgages and other assets being able to be brought on chain. And people may say, well, I don't want that. You don't even know how they're managed today. Like right now it's in a file in some, bank's back office, and they're gambling, with what they're going to, how they're going to manage that and selling it off. Wouldn't you rather know who owns your mortgage be able to say, hey, I have a choice of who's going to hold it. And it's not just in some massive TARP thing that's rolled up. So I think there's a lot more innovation there. Hawaii drops crypto licensing pilot, leaving industry unregulated. So let's be clear, it wasn't regulated to begin with. And Hawaii, state by state regulation, while I applaud, it's like the marijuana industry. Until you have federal adoption, you're kind of playing games on what works, what doesn't work. So I think it's good that there was at least that kind of chance and to make it happen. Europe is very different. Europe does have, some countries have very clear laws, but now that you have my car, it creates kind of adoption that passports around all those. So very similar to, like I said, I compare this a little bit to the marijuana, and for the states, for anyone who's international, you don't understand this. Some states say it's legal and you can go walk into a store or buy it, use it, no problems. But if you go across state lines, now it's a felony. And so I think that's a little bit of being able to kind of create that common, be able to trade, because while it may sound like we'll just do business in the state you're in, that's not the world we live in anymore. And so if I, Khori, I forget where you are right now, but if I wanted to say, hey, I want to use, USDC, USDT and pay you, if you're in New York City, that's absolutely illegal. like can't happen, won't happen. What's your thoughts?
So I think, this is a good call. I think the important note in this article here is that these companies can still operate, right?
Yep.
Still operate. But as you said, the officials in Hawaii, I'm making an assumption now, they may assume it's just a waste of time for them to do this. Like, do they have the expertise? Do they have the resources? Do they want to deal with all the headache? Kick it up to the feds, let them deal with it, and they can focus on other things for the people of Hawaii.
Before we start on our next topic, here's something really exciting. Everyone struggles with these really highly complex, intricate Ethereum names. ENS has a solution that's really game-changing for you. Revolutionizing your digital identity with ENS. Transform long, complex Ethereum name addresses into easy-to-remember names, safely, securely, and uniquely yours. Visit ens.app to get started today, and ENS welcomes you to the new internet. Let's go jump into AI. This is Einaras, the fun stuff that you really like to do. I think this is a fascinating story and just shows how incredibly screwed we are. I don't think anyone, we just did a very large deep dive yesterday, spent 90 minutes on ethics and laws around AI. And the concept around deep fakes is going to accelerate so fast over the next 2 years that most of the infrastructure that we have, such as passports, KYC, the things that even if we do regulate and legislate them, we've got a big problem with an entire new technology that's coming. So blockchain is just trying to get going and saying, look, we'll do KYC, we'll be OFAC compliant. And now you have over on the other side, AI spinning up and going, you know what? We can, in 10 seconds, we can beat all that, no problem. Einaras, I'm going to start with you. Like you're as an AI guy, like how screwed are we?
Well, so this example, I mean, what it really is, it's the old trick of taking pictures, amplified greatly with an AI tool, right? Meaning like it's not a new invention. People have been doing it for a little while now. You can do it a lot faster. So there's that. What's creepy is, and you've done this, you've seen this yourself when you sign up for a banking service. Increasingly, you have to show your face and move you around, etc. You can fake that too, right? I mean, there's another story which we'll talk about where an impersonation scam live with, change of your face in a video stream. So what that means is we'll have to keep coming up with additional layers for a user to sign up and to prove who they are. But if you can change somebody's face in a video, somebody's voice in a video, we're going to need to rethink a little bit like the entire paradigm. Because who you're talking to is now not necessarily the person, right? Showing up with your face is no longer enough. It's I don't know, maybe WellCoin is one of the solutions, but it'll be something along the lines of like really factually proving your identity. Maybe we should be setting up a franchise of little stores to go and prove, I am who I say I am.
And biometrics should solve this. And I say should, but and the concept around WorldCoin was like, it's not a flawed concept. It's just a flawed execution. But Khori, part of ENS is also the concept of digital ID. Is that you have multiple layers that have already been verified, and I know a little bit about some of the concepts you guys have thrown out there, but how does specifically ENS are you guys thinking about this type of problem around digital ID?
Yeah. So, and not just specifically within ENS, but in the ecosystem, I'm looking for people who want to address this challenge, this AI and digital identity challenge, so that we can support them. So FYI, anyone listening who's working on this type of thing, reach out so we can talk. But Jay, I'm with you. I think that this could upend so much. Identity theft is already a problem, right? Doing the identity theft the analog way, and now you moved into the digital way, and now you have AI supporting identity theft. So, I think industry we're going to have to get ahead of the curve and be better about facing these challenges. But leveraging blockchain and identity tools in concert with AI could battle this AI fraud. That's what I'm interested in looking more into.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a concept that comes out, and I'm not sure exactly the way it's going to be phrased. But there's, what is a human? Mm-hmm. What is a user? And, the other day I was on a live stream and it came and something like this popped up and it had like the questions like pick all the pictures with squares, and I am sitting here trying to do 3 things at once and I failed it like 6 times in a row. I'm a human. Like, let's be clear. The bot would have got it right perfect the first time. So I think there's this really flawed approach to how do we state that this person is, living, breathing and flesh and bones and trying to do something on here versus there's an AI with some sort of digital signature that we understand what it is. And I know Europe, again, I always go back to Europe because, they don't innovate, they regulate. And so I know they're trying to figure out how to watermark, how to say, this is AI generated, this is human generated, or is it a combination of two with a human being assisted? And Einaras, what's your concepts?
The whole watermark is just it's not going to work. It's Yeah, I mean, you do not need to use water services that have a watermark. You can use, there's such a big open source community with AI tools. If I'm a hacker, if I'm a criminal fraudster, etc., I'll just use a service that does not include a watermark. That's it. And those services are extremely capable to do this and so much more. The other point of it is the bad guys, they have a massive incentive to do just this because, stealing money has never been the issue. It's quite easy to hack and defraud folks. It's moving that money through financial tunnel that's always been hard, right?
Yep.
There's so many economical incentives for them to master fakes. It'll be tough. We may need to go a little analog before we go digital here on the defensive side.
It's a very interesting point. All right, jumping in again, more AI issues. Einaras, you just said it. Khori, we just talked about it. I think that the biggest threat, not just to the cryptocurrency industry and Web3, but I think that the biggest threat right now is AI. Nobody knows how to deal with this. Nobody even understands what it's capable of. And by the time I think we know what it can do, this is that fear. Is it too late? And the genie can't be put back in the bottle. But at this point right here, this next one is a Texas firm was essentially using AI to mislead voters, with a Joe Biden AI. So let's be clear: to be able to change someone's voice, to be able to change what they're saying, to be able to kind of make them stand into place and do something that they've never been, it is very, very easy to do at this point. It's almost novel. There's enough video of me on YouTube that somebody could create an entire podcast of me with my mannerisms, with my ums and everything that's wrong with me, that would be relatively passable of me. And that's today. 2-3 years down the road, I don't think that I think it's going to be very hard to understand what's real and what's not real. And just as a quick note before we go to the two panelists, my dad even this week sent me a video. He goes, "Is this real? This is amazing." And it was a video. It was in HD. It was Elon Musk on stage. And I only know this because I watched Elon Musk's SpaceX, kind of year end, like here's what we did and everything else. Unfortunately, the one my dad sent me was Elon talking about how he was giving away his wealth through a cryptocurrency drop. And it was Elon's tone. He was very slow in his delivery. He would pause and say, well, here's why I'm doing it. And it was perfectly done. And, it said at the bottom of the screen, all you have to do is scan the QR code to be entered. And again, it wasn't like you could tell, like I only knew, I would have known watching it, but I only knew because I watched that presentation, that it was 100% fake. But I think that this is coming. And so here we have the FCC already getting involved. But, Einaras, kind of jumping back to you, is anything or anyone safe?
Well, so the tech won't be stopped, right? Because, they can arrest someone in Texas, but they will not arrest anyone in Russia, right? So that's out. So now, if you're old media, TV, Fox, etc., ironically, you will become more trusted source for news, right? If you're YouTube and TikTok and Facebook and all of those companies, it'll be very, very difficult for you to monitor police this. And we've learned from the last 10 years that they suck at policing, right? Content. So I guess at the end of the day, it will be about that individual understanding that what she or he sees and hears and listens to may not be real, and that's a scary world. A lot of it is already not real, but at least we know it's people, not computers. It's scary. I don't know. I think it'll take us quite a few years to kind of process this as a society. We're still dealing with the last 10 years and all that nonsense, right?
Exactly. And I think part of this, and Khori, I don't know if you can help fill in the gaps, but one of the things that I've realized about doing business globally is, like, in the United States, you cannot scam anyone anywhere in the world. It is illegal, whether you're doing it to your neighbor or you're doing it across the world. Like, you cannot, commit crimes. And some countries, North Korea and others that you would be shocked by, as long as you're not committing it within the borders of the country, they don't care. It is a free enterprise of which the nation will collect their taxes, and scamming people outside of your country, that's just what your business does. And so when you kind of create that incentive and, to say, hey, scamming's okay. It's a legit business. We really need to be concerned. And I think that's, everyone hears about, certain countries, for certain scams. And I don't want to mention any of them because I've gotten to deal business in most of those countries. And most of the people are fabulous business people that really want to do good in the world. But that doesn't change the fact that the country allows this to happen. Khori, you do business globally. Yeah. So you understand that concept.
Yeah. So have you guys seen the new series with Mariana Van Zeller called Trafficked? It's on National Geographic, where she goes around the world and does this amazing investigative journalism in places where three of us would be scared to go, but she shows up and interviews the criminal element, right? And comes back alive every time. But it's a
until she doesn't.
Oh Lord. But great series to watch to just see what's happening out there in the world. And here in the US, as you said, Jay, like we expect fraud to be prosecuted. We expect when we're engaging in commerce that it's going to be on the up and up. But not everywhere in the world has a rule of law and like the appreciation for rule of law, like here in the West. So we have to not be gullible, and starts with education. So the education system here in the US, no one was taught financial literacy. You're starting to see in a few schools right now. No one was taught digital literacy, how to engage in the new world of the internet. You're starting to see it trickle here and there. We're going to have to start training the next population to be able to identify threats and to identify what persons, what entities, what institutions can be trusted. Right? So I like that's the only hope from now, to start to prepare people to enter into a world where you have these deep fakes. And there is, to your point on institutions that are kind of losing trust now, the traditional media, we're going to have to find a way to be able to trust them again for news and otherwise, But this is a scary world that the genie's out the bottle.
Yeah, trust is going to be one of those integral things that I don't think that any of us understand. And I like your point about education, but I'd like to point out, I was just talking to somebody today that is he's taking over the job as CIO for a multi-billion-dollar company, and he said he just got done with his audit of basically all There's a company called Know Before, and what they do is they send a bunch of fake emails to everyone in your staff, and they report back who clicked on the phishing and spear phishing emails to see, who was right, who was wrong, and is there anyone that needs more training. Then they'd rather you click on the wrong one with them, and then they can do appropriate training. This is a massive company. The department that failed the fake phishing scams, clicked on 11% of them was the IT department. The people that were most highly trained to have to deal with this were also the ones that were clicking through and exposing data from there. So I think it truly is, it's getting that good and that scary that education is going to be one of those things that we're going to have to start young.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's the hacking, the fraud piece. That's relatively the easier part of the crime. It's what you do with the money. That's typically been the harder part, the laundering. And so what you said, like this sort of testing and red hatting your team, typically in that scenario, that's typically what happens. I mean, people make mistakes, they click on links, download software. More often than not, the company fails.
Yep. So this is the one that you were alluding to, Einaras. And so this is I will say that we've dealt with this already. So I own a bunch of companies. One of those is a title company, and we generally say, hey, we will never send you emails. It's only going to be through a secure site that you're going to see wire information. And it even says we will always call you We will always call you, or you will always need to call us to confirm that wire information. Do not wire outside of this. They got an email and a phone call. And it the person wasn't trying to imitate anyone on our team, but somebody had hacked the client's email and kind of saw this coming through and created, a very good AI version that sounded American, sounded like a young female, and was able to get $100,000.
Circle of trust is what you'll need, because look, at a company like IBM, it's going to be tough, size of a company, but even there, you kind of need a little bit of a circle of trust. I get them quite a lot. I get the texts and messages from my accounting saying, this is probably not you, because this is not how you would ask me for money, right? We all get that. And that's because we understand each other. We've been working for so long together. Yeah, and going back to the analog, you'll be like basing your what's real, what's not on analog things.
Yeah. So this is this concept right now that they're talking about, which is audio jacking, which means that it's I think on Zoom calls and everything else, we're kind of used to, like, sometimes there's a little bit of a delay. Right now, Einaras, you're having a little bit of a stylining problem, and we all just kind of work through that. But now we have to really think, is there a man in the middle attack going? So Einaras, are you able to kind of walk us through what's happening here, and basically even how should people think about how to prevent this from them?
Well, it seems that they injected a different audio into a call. And so, both participants, A and B, are real people working in a real company. But there's an injection of an override, I guess, of the audio, where, some information is shared unknowingly between these two people.
Yeah. And so what you're seeing right here, and we'll just kind of walk through this diagram because I think it's really showcases what's happening. So you got person A and person B, and then in the middle there's an AI that is able to replicate tone, able to replicate phrases, and there's already knowing what kind of things it's listening for to do. So person A says, hey, it was great to see you at the conference yesterday, and they're passing that right through. Not important, and it establishes trust. Coming right back, me too. By the way, could you give me your Venmo account so I can share that bill with lunch for you? Sounds standard, and now in my mind, the AI is going, okay, we've got a target, we've got a reason to enable ourselves, and it's going to pass that right back for. Now the person says, hey, here is my Venmo account. Now you're seeing the AI inject, give me a second. It thinks through what it needs to do, because it's going to need a second to generate it. It's going to say, give me a second. Let me write it. Let me write that down. So this is an entire conversation that it's now bridged between, or created a gap between them, and is now speaking for each party, stating, here's the fake Venmo that they want you to have. Hold on one second. I'm confirming that I wrote it down. They enable, say, hey, got it. I'll send it to you today. And they pass that right back and forth. So the conversation can still continue, and no one would potentially know that there was this little it was just a tweak. It was change of a few things in here from the tone. And the conversation can continue about 20 other things. And then when the Venmo doesn't arrive, you go, what happened? And I don't think anybody would know. So to me, this is terrifyingly scary. I don't even know how you would even know you're exposed to this, because I don't even understand. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Beyond Enterprises, the ultimate 360-degree partner for companies ready to embrace the power of blockchain in their business strategies. Beyond Enterprises stands out as a beacon of expertise with a blockchain-agnostic approach that has seen successful projects on Ethereum, EOS, and Arc. Guided by blockchain thought leaders and fueled by inspired advisors, the team has played a pivotal role in over 40 successful ventures spanning token generation events, security token offerings, exchanges, and more. From healthcare to travel, finance, and beyond, Beyond Enterprises has left a massive mark on diverse industries. Elevate your business strategy today with pioneers of blockchain integrations, Beyond Enterprises, trusted 360 partner. So all the more reason to be terrified and hide
Great.
hide under your bed.
Thanks. So are services like Signal and their voice service, or Telegram and their voice service, or those types of services encrypted and protected so that this type of thing doesn't happen?
It's a good question.
Yeah, you would need to hack the actual computer or laptop or phone that the user has in order to do this. Not Zoom per se, not Signal. So, and it would need to be on both sides. So both victims would need to have their workstation hacked.
So this is where this is getting scary. Is there's a lot of us running. I think that most people are off analog phones at this point. But if we're talking about the most vulnerable, it is those with analog phones. It is those that do not have technology. Because I think you're right, Khori, like Signal is encrypted, end to end. You would know if somebody was jacking in. But as we've seen, our own NSA does a great job of kind of replicating calls and doing splitters with traditional, analog devices. So I do wonder, are the cell phones even safe? Because those are, without so I think this is an encryption question I have, Einaras, as I'm just thinking through this, is how do you make sure your communications from Zoom to whatever the case is to your phone, like, I have Malwarebytes, I've got all sorts of things, but now my phone needs antivirus and spyware.
iPhone, that would be tough to pull off on an iPhone. On an Android, definitely doable. I mean, malware is prevalent and very popular on Androids. This particular case here, that would be tough to pull off on an iPhone. Very tough. I mean, you would need maybe state actors to pull this off.
Okay.
Not your conventional regular mill criminal.
But you would only need one end to do this. So if somebody had an Android phone that was exposed, both people are now at risk.
Very true. Absolutely. Okay. Very, very true. So it would be a client-side hack. It's not Signal that you're hacking. You're not decrypting. What you're doing is you put malware on an Android, and that's manipulating part of the conversation.
I think we need to have a whole nother conversation related to this at a later date. But fabulous. So let's see, bringing it in towards a close, AI, great. Coming back to Khori, absolutely, super, super excited. I just want to end with this one because I think it's so important. We've kind of gone through all these stories. We've spent some time. We started with the ENS talk, and I want to kind of end with the ENS talk because I think it's the most critically important thing that we're all sharing and facing right now, which is identity and disclosures and trust. And so, Khori, one of the things I just want to, ask, politely for and push is to find ways to integrate security technology and authentication technologies into what you're doing, because suddenly this, Web 1 was read, Web 2 was write, Web 3 is own. And the fact that we now have ownership, and that to me, that includes our identities. That's our persona. That if I feel like this podcast does anything well today, is that it scares the CEO of ENS to say we need more validation and verification on KYC, on who is who, because the Web 2 scams, we don't want them. We already have plenty of our own.
Yeah.
In Web 3. Yeah. So what did you take away from all this today?
Yeah, we have to do so much more work and think through the user journey. So we've been talking a lot about people's experiences with Web3 products and services and what it looks like. Make it simple, safer, secure, but we need to lean into the safety and the secure portion of that. Build with the end user in mind and build with security, because not everyone is going to be able to, secure their own keys. Not everyone is going to be consistent with, not clicking on the wrong links. You're going to have these error experiences. So, I'm safety and security of the ENS community and ecosystem. Very important to us, and we're doing a lot of work to actually protect the community from scams. this week we've seen a huge uptick actually after the big news about GoDaddy of new domains being registered. And so probably in the next couple of weeks, you're going to start to see some scams. And we're taking steps to directly address that. But I would like to be more proactive, and other builders as well, who are building with ENS and Web3 in general. Let's be much more proactive about the security piece.
I love it. I love it. Einaras, any advice for them to really start staring at?
Yeah, security by design. It's a competitive advantage. People trust businesses that take their security seriously. I choose services that I can rely on, that I know that, maybe I'm biased, I'm a security guy, but I think generally speaking, those businesses tend to win out in the long run.
I love that. I love that. Khori, where can people find you if they want to know more or learn more, or just follow you on some of your favorite social media platforms?
All right. Well, actually, since we're Web3 natives here, let's take a look at Farcaster and Warpcast.
I got it.
You got it? You're on it?
I got it. And I actually got my initials. I actually was able to get at JVS. Nice. So I was early enough to make that happen.
Nice. So yeah, let's hang out on Farcaster, Warpcast, and Khori.eth, and ENS domains also, ens.eth on Farcaster. Come hang out. Let's chat. Let's share ideas. Great to be here today and speak with you in Einaras. Thank you.
Einaras, where can we hunt you down?
I'm old school, so LinkedIn. My name is not hard to find. There's not many of me.
I love it, guys. Thank you so much for the time. Absolutely fabulous. Really appreciate the time as always. Y Wheels, another one in the bag. We'll see you guys next time.
All right.